Hello.
Hi, Mayor.
Do we have, are there any speaker cards from the public?
We do not have any speaker cards.
Awesome. So it looks like our first agenda item is gonna be an update on sales tax information by HDL Companies. Ken Brown from HDL Companies will present the item.
I like out of breath, Mayor. And he's
Seriously?
he's a little more calm and not so cocky. It's perfect. Funny from now on, run up and down the stairs.
Well, thank you so much. Good to be here again today. We had some good news for you last quarter, and I think even better news this quarter. This is the fourth quarter, so the holiday sales tax quarter, October through December of 2022. And we always compare to the same 3-month period a year before to take out the seasonality. And so on the first slide here, now up on the screen, you can see the results for Corona compared to the county, Southern California region, and California overall. And results were pretty standard for the county, state, in Southern California at around 5-6%. But Corona's results, as you can see up there, 21.5% increase over the same period last year. Now, I'll get into the details in a little bit, but pretty nice quarter. Now, the next graph here shows the longer term trend, not just looking at one quarter, but going back in time all the way to 4Q19. And here what we're doing is we're showing Corona in the green line up top for any of you that are colorblind. I know some of us suffer from that. And right below that is Riverside County, the line there, and then Southern California and California at the bottom. And so this is showing per capita sales tax generation. And so Corona has always been a leader in sales tax generation, and you see here that that continues. Actually, with this solid result this quarter, the spread has even grown a little bit wider. And on the next slide, we've got 2 city comparison slides that we do. So this is comparing you the same per capita metric, sales tax generation, comparing you to several other cities. You're right there in the middle in the dark green. Up top is Ontario. Down below that is Temecula, and then below that is Riverside. And so you're definitely made up some ground there this quarter and last quarter coming up on Temecula right there. And then the spread between you and Riverside also distanced a little bit this quarter. On the next slide, we have the city comparison too. And so this is a couple other cities that we compare against. This is Eastvale, Norco, and Hoopa Valley. And, Eastvale, similar trend to you here, going up. Second from the top there is Norco. Norco trending down a little bit. They're heavy in used cars, and there's been a lot of inventory issues with used car dealers recently. And in fact, some really sky-high prices that we saw a year ago are starting to recede a little bit. And so I think that's much of that. But you are gaining on Norco there. And then here's the story for the 4th quarter. So $2.7 million improvement compared to last year. The bulk of that, as you can see, is in one category, what we call business and industrial. And about 1.6 million of the $2.7 million increases in that one category. And it's really predominantly the function of 2 factors. The biggest is you got what I would characterize as an abnormal payment from a new business and industrial taxpayer. It's a pretty new taxpayer, an extremely large payment. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know for sure if it's not an error. And so we'll have to wait and see. But it could be also one-time monies for furnishings for facilities or for equipment purchases. Or we may see ongoing revenues at similar levels going forward. So I'm going to be really anxious to see the results for the 1st quarter. But a very large payment from a business industrial taxpayer. Another issue.
A single business.
There's a bunch of stuff in this category. I would say the one business had the bulk of this, but not all of it. The other factor, to a lesser degree, but still significant, was another business and industrial company. We've talked about them maybe about a year and a half ago in these meetings. We noticed that they started allocating to the Riverside pool, and we believed at that time that it was an error, and the city filed a petition with the state for a recovery. The state is still investigating that, but the good news is all of a sudden you got a payment from them for the first time in about 2 years. And so something prodded that payment, and so I think that that's good news that maybe at some point we'll see a recovery of the funds that are pending, but you also got a first-time payment from a second business in that category. So that explains the bulk of what happened. So a couple of anomalies there.
So is that can you tell us if that's a zip code? If it's 92883?
Don't know. I don't know, honestly. Yeah, don't know.
Just
Are you not allowed to tell us the business name?
Can't, yeah, because
Okay.
of confidentiality, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The question that everybody wants to know?
Because you can backpedal into sales and people don't want it to.
Got it.
Sales.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we'll keep an eye on it, and so I'll be really excited to come back and see the results next quarter and talk to you about that. But, you know, it's good news, right? And we'll see where it goes from here. Also, pretty good news here, building and construction. You had contractor sales are really big here in Corona, and the price of building material construction products are really high right now with inflation. And there's still strong demand for infrastructure, for all kinds of improvements. And so your building sector also did quite well. And with all that good news, you see over there the county pool. And so I don't spend a lot of time talking about the county pool because it's pretty arcane. And but basically, the county pool is sort of a catch-all for like out-of-state internet sales, construction-related revenues, some business and industrial purchases. So it's sort of a catch-all. And how it's split up every quarter is basically the better you do, the more money you get from the pool. So the pool's divvied up among all the jurisdictions in this case, Riverside County. And if you have a great quarter, you're gonna get a bigger share of the pie, okay? And so you got a bigger share of the pie this quarter thanks to your solid growth everywhere else. So that is pretty much the highlights of the quarter. And so you see here, looking back at trends, I find this fascinating. You see building and construction, the green line up at top, the dark green line. It's always been, or at least since I've been working with you, your largest category in terms of major industry groups for sales tax. You see right below that, this huge surge in business and industrial returns this quarter. Mostly, I mean, there's some other stuff in there, but the two factors that I just mentioned were two of the biggest reasons for that growth. But look at how these lines are almost meeting now. And so if we continue to see tax receipts at the same level in the business industrial group, and I'm imagining that with this wet winter, we may have a dip next quarter in building construction returns in the first quarter. It's been a really wet winter. We might see those two lines actually meet, and business and industrial might be your number one category, but we'll have to wait and see.
Great.
Turning to the next slide, the last three major industry groups, fuel and service stations, restaurants and hotels, food and drugs. Really the main point here is that fuel and service stations, it looks like they're dipping, but they're still up compared to last year, which is really the comparison we tend to look at the most. Yeah, the price of gas, it's still really high, and I think you made that comment last quarter, which is spot on. But it is down a little bit from the peak during the summer months that you see that peak right there. And I think also during the second and third quarter, usage tends to be a little higher. People drive more and such, but still quite a ride in the fuel and service station sector.
Think that'll go up now that the gas tax went up again?
Well, I just saw that this weekend OPEC did a surprise announcement. They're cutting production.
Yeah.
And so there's some talk that price of oil could go up to $100 a barrel again. So yeah, we may be in for a wild ride.
Right. Good thing I got the hybrid.
The electricity isn't cheap either though.
No, it is not.
So looking at the long-term trend, 37.8% growth over the last 13 quarters with all this good news. And this is sort of building on top of what we saw coming out of the pandemic, right? We had a couple bleak quarters there, but really coming out of the pandemic, it's been good for a while. Looking at Measure X results came in with growth of about 5.5%. Yes, 5.5% compared to last year, which is pretty typical. That's about what we saw as we remember what we saw back in the first slide, looking at the statewide trend. I think we were up 5.7% for sales tax statewide, so right in that range. So overall, the last year, you've gotten $44.6 million from Measure X. And that concludes my presentation.
Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, I do not have any speaker cards.
My colleagues have any questions, comments?
Thank you.
No, sir, thank you. That's great. Good news. 37% is a hell of a number.
We will receive and file that. Thank you, sir. See you next quarter. Okay, moving on to the economic development update.
Hello, ladies.
Hello, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The presentation queued up, and we have one team member joining us via the Teams. So today, we are pleased to provide you with an update on some exciting economic development initiatives that are underway, and I have joining me our 3 economic development administrators, one online and 2 here, of course, in person, and they will be able to highlight some of the projects that they're overseeing in the specific areas of business attraction and development, business retention and expansion, and redevelopment, downtown revitalization. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Great, thank you, Jessica. So today, I'm just here to provide you with a quick update in terms of our retail attraction efforts, which have been underway for the past few months. So in November, we secured the services of the Retail Coach, which is a retail attraction and recruitment consulting firm. And so they've been supporting us these past couple of months with really doing a deep dive analysis into our retail trade area, and I'm going to cover a little bit of what that looks like. And then utilizing that information, they've been helping us with identify potential retailer matches that will be a good fit for the city. So we're talking about citywide, a little bit more shopping center focused, as well as for our downtown. So obviously on screen, that's just a map of Corona's boundaries. You're obviously very familiar with this. I just wanted to highlight this briefly because one of the first things that we took a look at was identifying our primary trade area. And essentially that more or less means about 50 to 80% of Corona retail sales, where those are being generated from in terms of primary residency. So you'll see on screen, this is our primary trade area. So obviously it expands much farther beyond City of Corona boundaries. It goes pretty far into Riverside, all the way down as far as Lake Elsinore area. And so really this is just meant to highlight we have a lot more spending power than just within our city limits. And I think sometimes when we're developing and strategies and things around that when it comes to retail, we can't just think about our city population. We really have to think about our larger trade area.
So these are folks that live in Corona, they're spending their dollars.
No, sorry. Yeah, it's the opposite actually. So they live elsewhere,
Yeah.
but they spend in Corona.
Oh, got
So
it.
there are retailers and things that are attracting them to Corona, and they're spending a majority of their spending is occurring in Corona.
Can this map get granular? I mean, I'm just curious, like it shows a highlighted area, but is there hot zones within this area that, like I showed, like up here in Eastvale,
Yeah.
At the Eastvale Market Center, that's Limonite and Hamner, like, is that like a super hot area, or the area around Costco or something like that?
I'd have to check with our consulting firm if we can take a deeper dive. I know that there's some access to data that we have. One of them, Ashley, we'll briefly talk about too, is Placer AI we're bringing on board. And so they do a little bit of retail leakage and demand analysis based on cellular data. So it's not necessarily sales tax driven, but it's cellular data. So we're working on onboarding them with IT, and we're gonna be having access to that.
Okay.
And yes, it's the creepy data.
This is a great map just because it's so often I always hear our demographics, and I'm saying, look, we attract more money from outside of the city
Yeah.
than we do inside.
Well, and
This proves it.
yeah, I'll mention that too. I'll be covering that in a couple of slides, but it does go, it's demographics is part of it, but it's also demographics beyond our city boundaries.
Yeah.
So I'll be highlighting that as well. And then just kind of showing you in terms of a broader reach. So this is secondary trade area. This is essentially kind of the remaining percentage, of spenders. So you can kind of think of this group as they're not, they're spending some of their time, not a majority of their time, within Corona as far as their spending goes. So it may be that they work in Corona, They do some spending here, but they live elsewhere. Or they may have family or friends that they pretty regularly, consistently visit out here, and then their dollars are being generated from that. So again, just kind of a look at the data and why understanding our primary trade area is significant. So you can really see, so the blue is Corona figures and projected population growth up until 2028. And then the kind of orangish yellow is where that's our primary trade area population number. So we're talking about over 500,000, 500,000 people that are regularly, consistently shopping within Corona. And then if you factor in the secondary area, it goes over to 1.1 billion. And then again, just another thing that we're taking a look at, and this is where it also helps in terms of types of information that we're sharing specifically with retailers. So again, blue is Corona, orange is our primary, and then the kind of reddish color is secondary. So in this instance, we actually have higher household incomes, both per capita, median, and average. So if that's something that would be a better selling point for a retailer, that's something that we can hire that, hey, we actually have it higher than what our primary trade area is. And if this is a type of demographic that you're looking to hit, we have it.
That's great.
I'm going to go into psychographics now. So if you're not familiar with what psychographics are,
Great name.
I want to be psycho with these.
yeah, they're like agro demographics. So essentially, it's kind of a consumer index of sorts. So Experian is a kind of a leader in this field. And as well as Esri. So this is Esri's psychographics. And so on screen, they have basically 14 overarching life mode summary groups. That's their terminology for it. And then they've come up essentially with these categories of people. So it's basically taking more than just, oh, my typical customer is a 30-year-old white woman or something to that effect. It's more so driven about behaviors and things that can be tracked, especially through credit and purchases and things like that. So this is something that retailers take a look at as well as demographics. It's not one or the other, it's typically both. And so I'll give you examples of that in the coming slides. So these are even more.
Awesome. I love the names. I'm gonna...
Yeah, the names are yes, yeah. They're kind of fun. So again, there's the overarching groups. This is one specific subsector, and then the three groups that I'm highlighting, these are the most prevalent within Corona. So the first is Group 1C, affluent estates, otherwise known as boom burbs, and so the same type of target information is included, and you can kind of see where the variation comes into play. So this group is just over 3 people per household. This is generally made up of young professionals with families. Median household income is pretty high, about $113,000. On the right hand of the screen, you're seeing different types of occupations that are most common within this group. And then the lower left hand of the screen is average household budget index. And so for a frame of reference, 100 is considered average. You can see for this group, they're well above spending in all of those categories, essentially. And there's different things that are associated with these groups. So there's kind of market information that a lot of retailers will pull from this group. So like just a random piece of market information regarding this group. Technology is really important to this group. So if you're in a technology type business, say you're Apple or something, and there's a high prevalence of this type of group within your primary trade area, that is a benefit to them, just as an example. Up next is ethnic enclaves. So this is a group made up of multicultural, multi-generational, and multilingual individuals. So this is a slightly higher average household, closer to 4. Median household income around $62,000, and then you can see there's a little bit more of a variation in jobs compared to the last one, which was more management, and this one has more office and administrative report, transportation, construction, and then the average household index you can see it's actually much closer to what would be considered average, but there are some variations in categories. So apparel is the highest category for this group. So that's something where, again, demographics and psychographics it would play into a factor for a retailer, clothing company. And then last up is Group 4A, Family Landscapes, Soccer Moms. So just under 3 household size. This group is typically made up of a household with 2 working parents and then growing children. So they may even be out of the house at this point. So again, different types of jobs that make up this group. This one includes a little bit more of healthcare and education careers, and then slightly above average household budget index spending. Just a couple more,
That we have most of in the city?
I'm sorry?
These 3 are the ones that we have
They're
most
the
of?
3 most, prevalent.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a mix of all, basically, but those are the 3 most common types. So another thing that we took a look at was retail demand outlook. So this is our 4 largest retail spending categories: general merchandise, restaurants, food and beverage, and then building materials. So projected growth across all categories, and then there was also a deeper dive taken at, well, there's subcategories for all of these, but on the next slide you'll see in particular related to for food service and drinking places, which is obviously a big driver for a lot of retail centers. So essentially, that's led us to kind of where we're at right now. And so all of this type of information has been combined. And then another factor that has been taken into place is what is the projected growth for these retailers. So especially when it comes to our downtown, we were taking more of a focused look on unique and different concepts. You may recall back in 2021, summer 2021, we undertook a survey. We had over 3,000 responses relating to shopping, dining, and entertainment. And a lot of what we heard, we had a very specific retailers called out that interested our community. That information has been shared with our retail attraction firm, the Retail Coach. But there was also a lot of just expressed interest in, we want something different, we want something unique. And so the Retail Coach has really gone above and beyond in terms of identifying more regionally based, very small concepts. You can see some of these on screen. So this is a mix. This is a mix of regional. Some might have 20 locations, some might have just a few. The lower right-hand corner is an example. That's actually, they're a retail hospitality group. They have a couple of very small concepts. They have 3 SoCal locations for Gus's Barbecue. And I think their closest location is in like Pasadena area. And then there's other types that we took a look at, like After's Ice Cream, which is really popular. Especially there's, I think, several locations in Orange County. And they're looking to expand even more. They have a location in Las Vegas. They're looking to expand into Arizona. And they're looking to expand their market in Southern California as well. So again, it's kind of a broad range. We really tried to make the focus in terms of unique eateries and entertainment concepts as far as what we're trying to prioritize based on those survey results and what we know our community members want to see. So as far as next steps go, what we've been doing is we've been working with our consulting firm to try to really firm up and essentially narrow down the list to our top 30 in terms of who we're trying to actively go after over these next few months. It's, again, downtown focused, but also citywide. And we're also partnering and have been conducting outreach and facilitating conversations with some of our largest shopping centers to try to understand what their current vacancies are and see how we can support and help facilitate conversations in terms of identifying some good matches for their centers as well. So we're finalizing marketing packages and outreach. Our consulting firm has also been having some preliminary conversations with some of the retailers that we've identified and expressed interest. And we'll be continuing to advance those conversations over the coming months.
How does how do our shopping centers respond when we say, listen, we've done a bunch of market research and these are the top 30 restaurants, shops that we think will do well here? Do they respond well to that data saying, oh, thank you for saving us from having to do all of this?
Yes, we've had a few conversations, and Ashley's gonna get a little bit into the shopping center outreach. I think it's honestly very positive reception. They're obviously, you know, having their own conversations and facilitating that as well. But part of the benefit in terms of us having a consultant on board is they also have the connections with the types of retailers that we're trying to
Sure.
have those conversations with. So a lot of it is just initiating the dialogue and
Yeah.
and having the right contacts in that
I think
respect.
the connection is what's important, right? You develop the data set.
Yeah.
The businesses develop the same data set and they're trying to
Yes.
match up.
It's an additional data set because it's like, it's taking that missing piece that we talked about 2 years ago, which is what do people wanna see versus, you know, who, because you talk to a broker that's actively trying to fill up one of these shopping centers, you know, yeah, they have a marketing plan, but they also are working with 24 other places. So a lot of times it's whoever knocks on the door to a
Yeah.
certain extent.
Yeah.
So if we can help facilitate people to knock on the door that people have said that they wanted, then it's the side that I've, you know, been saying since you guys all started. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you guys. This is great.
And just a quick note before Ashley jumps into it, we've been able to facilitate some introductions to date with retail codes and the property owners, shopping centers, and they have exactly what you alluded to. They've been so enthusiastic because obviously they're our consultant, and by doing so, it's free to our property owners, our shopping centers. They don't have to pay a fee. They're reaping the benefit of having this knowledge and then being able to go strategically after the tenants that are a good fit for them.
It's interesting though that, you know, Retail Coach sends, I must be on some list because I on every list apparently. But they
You
they
signed
will.
up for it. That's
Read
why.
everything.
Well, I go, they go, do you wanna know how you get, you know, whatever, and I go, yeah, I wanna know that. And then you can watch their little presentation. The last couple that I watched were fantastic. In fact, one of the retailers they highlighted in there, I thought was such a really cool concept that I talked to one of the developers here in town, retail space owners, and he said, are you bugging our place? Because we just talked to them yesterday and we're moving forward or we're doing whatever. I was like, oh, that's great. But it's interesting to hear both sides from not just, you know, the demographics and getting those pieces together, but hearing what was important to some of the retailers. So they'll bring in a guest that represents, you know, A, B, or C business, and they ask them what's important. And they, you know, gave them a choice and said, well, guaranteed timeline to get to the city for permits was number one. Speed, how fast you could get permits, how quickly you can get to the city, and like what the city could provide to them in terms of incentives was way far down the list. They said that doesn't really matter because you don't get them forever. You want to make sure you have the demographics that meet all those pieces, and that when you execute a lease, that you can move in a certain period of time and start generating revenue. So yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we're now going to shift over to business retention and expansion. So throughout the year, we're always enacting different programs, visitations, meetings, presentations, making sure that we're really connecting and building that rapport with the business community, shopping centers, property owners, things like that, and just making sure we're keeping that dialogue going so that they know that the city is an asset to them. We're a tool that they can dive into and make sure that we're making those connections, and it's really part education and putting ourselves out there as well, right? So we're really excited about what we've been able to put out there. I'm going to go into some details of what we've been working on over the last quarter. So one of the tools that we utilize is that business outreach that I previously mentioned. So we've done in-person visits, Zoom meetings, and really utilizing 3 unique strategies to support this business outreach. The first being shopping centers. So, and I will touch on this briefly because Jessica did mention this, but what's been really great is we've been connecting and really making a target effort to our shopping centers, especially those that have the larger footprints here in Corona. So we've connected with Shops at Dos Lagos, Crossings Corona, Bedford Marketplace, Corona Hills Plaza, just to name the 4. And we also connected with McKinley, but I'll share that a little more detail on that on a different slide. But again, it's really understanding that having that conversation is so important to them understanding all the different things that are happening in the city, all of the great tools that they can tap into. So business support includes things like putting them in our newsletter that has over 12,000 subscribers, making sure that they're aware of different programs that they can connect directly as either property owners or property managers, but also their tenants. Like understanding that there's two parts to this and making sure that both sides' needs are being met. We also support with workforce needs. So we have our own program, Live for Corona, which I will talk about later, but also connecting with our partners and making sure that do they have the workforce that they can tap into? Do they have that skilled labor? And we're hearing firsthand what those needs look like. We're also understanding the different financial incentives we can tap into, subsidies, access to capital, and again, going to both spectrums if they need millions of dollars or just some access to capital to purchase some equipment, for example. And if we don't have it ourselves, we make sure to talk to our partners at various levels, regional, state, federal, and making sure, again, we're having those connections and conversations so that they're aware what's out there and what they can tap into. We also talked about vacancy support. So the retail coach has been absolutely positive experience thus far. I know 2 of which have already had one-on-one conversations, and it was very well received. I will say Dos Lagos does have basically no vacancy rate at the moment, but they're always looking to grow. So, and definitely having conversations with Scott there and making sure that we're having that rapport. But again, understanding that this is something they're interested in. We already did that part of work, and the first time they hear about, wow, this is a free resource we can tap into. You already did all this market data we're about to pay someone for. Fantastic. So it's been positive thus far, and we're really hopeful about what type of impact this can make in the area. So Outreach Today, I did allude to the 4 centers there. We've done presentations. We've also connected with different commercial brokers that do events at those locations, and also making sure that we're continuing to feature them in our newsletter. So a couple of the newer businesses have been featured, and we continue again to have on-site conversations, on-site presentations, and making sure that the tenants are aware of the ways as a city we can support them. So we're gonna keep hitting the pavement. We're gonna continue to do those visits, make those phone calls, have those Zoom meetings, really having those interactions that are so important to keep this dialogue going, for us to understand as you're bringing someone in, what they're experiencing, whether it's the initial stages and they're going through that permitting process, or they're opening their doors, or if they're looking for a vacancy opportunity. Again, having that conversation, continuing to do outreach is gonna be so crucial to making sure we continue that conversation and help, and really bring a lot of great opportunity to Corona, right?
So Dos Lagos is full now?
No, they're not full. They have tenant lease agreements. They're not full.
They have no more space available. That's why they're looking to actually add on and build some more space.
Someone took the anthropology space? Okay, cool.
West
And this is
Public
public
has
information.
agreements.
They did share it in a public forum, so that's a great way too, is that we're always very thoughtful about that as well. And this is something they presented to their commercial brokers basically in the area.
It's impressive.
They've done a great job.
Wonderful. So definitely want to highlight a bit on the McKinley businesses, because there's been a lot of targeted efforts for this due to the project that's going off of McKinley. So we've connected to date with over 78 businesses in the area, whether it's been phone calls, in-person visits, meetings, just again following up and making sure, because we understand that this is a process, and if we can help alleviate some of the issues that they're incurring, them when we try to. And one way we've done that is really through our business spotlights. So really bringing that Corona community to come together and serve as a patron for these areas. So we have done 3 so far. We have 5 underway, and we continue to remind individuals that we're here, and the business owners that we're available to. We go on site, we do a brief interview, and we take some wonderful photos, and some samples are here of businesses that we've either featured or will be featuring. And so again, we're really excited about how we're able to have that free marketing tool for them. In addition, we subscribe them onto our newsletter, because the newsletter is not just about getting their name out there, but also for them to tap into resources. So if any new grants come out, we make sure to connect them to those opportunities. Again, making sure that we're having that conversation. And even though we did reach the 78, we did have 10 businesses that reached back out and wanted those individualized services, which is why we're able to do those newsletters. So we continue to reiterate that we're here as a resource, and just continue that conversation. So the moment that they reach out and say they're interested, we immediately begin that dialogue. The last thing, and I know Councilmember Speak has heard me talk about this a lot, but Live
Love
with
it.
Corona.
Keep talking about it.
So we're really excited because we launched our website last November, and really that was the start to letting people know about the campaign. People could see something much more tangible and understand the goal of this, and this is something that we're building throughout. So we had that launch. We're now in the outreach stage. So we're reaching to our top 100 employers, our industry clusters. We've connected with over 50 businesses to date, secured 17 pledges, and we expect more underway. This is all about, as they see more large key players take that pledge, they get really excited. And the fact that we have a dedicated careers page, so we have our jobs, job seeker resources, our employer resources, and then careers page unique to Corona. And it's a really, I'm excited too about
so
it.
excited.
So, and this is something that as we do more updates, we're hoping that that number just keeps going up, that we're able to showcase, really what this is able to do. And on top of that, to really help with this is developing that marketing campaign. So that's really where the phase we are in right now. In doing the outreach, we're also doing the campaign that's going to be targeted, again, both at job seekers and at our employers. So it's really exciting because we're working with our communications department. We are having that rebranding that's occurring. We're going to make sure to go hand in hand with them. We're going to develop promotional materials. So when someone takes the pledge, here's this beautiful packet of items that you receive when you take that pledge. And just, again, ways for them to celebrate and really acknowledge all the great things that we're doing here.
It'd be great to have like standing on one of the bridges on the 91 and have like a drone shot of just the stacks of cars and go, do you want to do that? Or do you want to work here? And have a cutaway to some business that says, hey, we need people to do this.
Definitely love that idea because we've had the park at home, not on the 91 type
Yeah,
concept. So I think that's a great footage
Yeah.
to have. And so just again, a really opportunity to see that there's a way to improve your quality of life, and employers, there's a way to increase your retention. Because if you have someone who's local, who knows that they can pick up their kid after school, or that they can attend an event or whatnot, they really recognize the importance of that. They also recognize these employers are investing in their communities, because those tax dollars, or those dollars are, sales is really done during the daytime now because they're here in Corona.
Look at the guy we met today. He's worked at the same company for 50 years because he didn't want to go anywhere else. He wanted to live here, work here, met his wife at work, and
She's worked there for 37 years.
Still
Yeah.
there.
She's still there.
Those success stories, that's what we really want to
Yeah,
hear
that's
about
perfect.
years from now, now and in the future. And we're really excited too because we're going to make sure that we actually host so we're having our job fair on May 20th. So we're really excited about that because that also goes hand in hand with putting this out there, really educating the public and bringing those opportunities. It will be largely focused on Corona employers, what we're doing with that job fair, and we're working in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. And we're also going to have resource partners. So if there's someone who needs to be upskilled or needs to have their resume looked at, again, understanding that they need those tools as well. So we'll be offering that on site, and we're also trying to aim for on-site interviews. So potentially people will be hired on the spot, right? So we're excited there. And then on the metric side of this, we're going to be requesting on a quarterly basis from our employers. So they're not required to end a quota. We make that very clear to them. It's not meant to be a deterrent. It's meant to us just to be informed. And hopefully over time, we're able to see, wow, this last quarter, they were able to hire 5, Corona-specific employees. And really utilizing those metrics for the future to really understand the growth of Live Work Corona. And we're also going to tap into Placer AI, which is, Amanda briefly touched on this, but it looks at the creepy data, the cellular data that looks at the commuter patterns, where people are going. And again, this is understanding long-term change. It's not about an overnight shift. It's not about what's going to happen next weekend. It's long-term. What are we going to see 10 years from now? All those students graduating from CNUSD, are they going to come back after they get their certifications, associates, or potentially even 4 years, and they're coming back to Corona because they realize all the different career pathways and opportunities that are here. So we're really looking at those conversations and making those connections so that they return and continue to really make that positive impact here. So we're excited. And then we're going to celebrate them. We're going to continue to do business spotlights. People like I think his name is Jerry, right? Who's been there for 50 years at Lejon. Just making sure that we can celebrate people who are really emulating this Corona pride and making sure that they're emulating what Live Work Corona is all about. And so we're going to do those business spotlights, do council recognition, bring them to you guys, and so we can again celebrate them and really see this as an ongoing opportunity to really vocalize how important this is to community and to our employers and to our residents. And so we're really excited about where this has started and where it's going.
That's great.
So I actually have a moment. I'll take any questions you may have, or.
I just keep going. It's awesome. I'm so excited. This is all the things we've been talking about for the last 2 years, and seeing them actually in place. I know I was going to bring a tear in my eye. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Well, we're excited to share this. So from that, I'm going to pass along to my colleague Jess.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Apologies. I'm not in person as I'm saving you from my colds and sniffles.
Thank you.
So really quick, we just wanted to jump into a development update. So as council is aware, the downtown revitalization plan was adopted in September of last year. So as part of that implementation effort of the DRP, staff has been making great headway on pushing along key catalyst projects as outlined in that implementation plan. So today we have a few development updates for you on those key catalyst projects. As we were going through the DRP process, outreach and community engagement, we heard the residents express a deep desire to reestablish downtown Corona as the center of the city's commercial, civic, and social life. So hopefully these projects are pushing that forward, and we'll bring that vision to fruition there. Next slide, please. So the first update we have for you is the South Mall development timeline. As you are aware, the city is in its ongoing partnership with Lab Holding, is working to complete approximately 23,000 square feet in new retail and outdoor dining space at the South Mall. So on screen for you is a current timeline of the development and opening of the Southside Social. Currently, we are in the construction phase. They had some delays in some framing due to some previous fire damage, but those permits have been approved, and we've assured that framing has commenced once again. Tenant improvements are expected to take place through the summer, and with a grand opening slated for this fall. So on screen is a conceptual image of the Southside Social project, along with the conceptual design of the rear courtyard, which will provide outdoor seating to Lab's now secured brewery tenant. So features of that design, of course, include a fountain area, green space, a fire pit for the patrons of that brewery and other tenants to enjoy. And then in addition, we have a leasing update. So Lab is just about 100% leased at the South Mall. They have 7 executed signed leases. So as you can see on screen, Space 2 is Counterculture, craft, alcohol, beer, bottle shop. Space 4 is an existing insurance office space that will be on a month-to-month basis until a new tenant is secured. Space 5 is the Wine Down, which is a wine bar use. Space 6 is Route 30 Brewing. Takes up the space over at Space 6, as well as that outdoor rear courtyard. Space 7 is the Showcase Theater. So this is a nice homage to the original Showcase Theater that was there. This will serve as a lounge and a music venue with surrounding restaurants supplying food during events. Space 8 is Tavern Cafe, taking up a couple spaces there. And then Space 9 is Tacos Los Cholos, which is a popular Mexican restaurant specializing in wood-fired grilled tacos. In addition, Lab has 2 LOIs underway, one for a barber retail tenant, as well as an additional restaurant space. Of course, these are subject to change as executed leases come about, but that is our leasing update for you today. Another effort going on at the South Mall is to continue to revitalize the South Mall and the downtown in general, and it's by a redesign of the parking lot. An interdepartmental team consisting of planning, traffic, public works, CMO's office, and our economic development team has met on site along with Lab and their engineering team to work through a design and a redesign of the project. This is really to create a grand drive entry, a roundabout, create those placemaking features that are going to enhance the South Mall and also be, a kickoff to those catalyst projects in the downtown. The design also includes some featured expanded sidewalks. Of course, we want to create a more pedestrian friendly and environment, as well as connectivity to the North Mall project.
Jess, who's
Yeah.
who's doing the actual construction of the parking lot?
Currently, the Lab and the city are sharing in the redesign of the parking lot. So that includes construction redesign efforts. And then the city through ARPA funding would be doing the actual constructed improvements to the parking lot.
Do we have a construction schedule on the parking lot?
Currently, design is pretty much baked out. We've had all departments look through it. They do have to submit formally. We have a cost sharing agreement that has been routed over to the Lab that allows us to share in that redesign cost. There is already an engineer on board and is scoping out the design for the lot. The goal here is to align the construction of the parking lot with the improvements that are going on in the Lab owned spaces, so that when the tenants are ready to go, so is the parking lot, and we have a cohesive project built out by the fall.
Which would be in the fall. So the tenants are expected to open up in the fall, and so we want to align the schedules currently.
Correct.
So being that we're in early April and their projected opening is September, October, I would imagine that construction has to start pretty soon.
So we would start it in phased approach. So we did speak with our public works CIP team to make sure that we're at least facing it. So as some tenants are coming in, we're able to start some of the construction that would allow them to be able to do their TIs. So we'll be working closely with them. But as Jess mentioned, the first step is we're finalizing the design, and then we'll move forward with the construction, bearing in mind their schedule.
So that's the question, I guess, is what comes first? Is the TIs comes first, or does this part come first?
Right now,
So-
we're in the design phase. Right now, we would be doing the cost sharing for the design.
But the TIs haven't submitted blueprints, right?
So Jess, I'm not sure if you heard the question whether we've received any type of blueprints for TIs. So right now, we're still in design.
Still in, the shell design. We have not received TI improvements yet through Plan Check.
Have a chance of running concurrently, because it's the same timeline for a parking lot. Well, the parking lot would be a little bit longer in a TI, but it'd be close.
I'm just more thinking of what would you do in order to not get in the way of the other one?
They're
Yeah,
not,
so
they're gonna be in
we-
the way of each other, especially seeing as,
That's my question.
this
There's
is
no
a
way to
6 month,
accelerate the program faster.
this is a 6 month finished timeline, and we're still in design on the parking lot.
Get friendly construction workers, get the Honda people out there.
I guess I'm just concerned because I would hate for a beautiful project to be done and no parking lot. Or
And that is likely to happen for
a
period of
beautiful
time.
parking lot and no beautiful development.
Sure.
That would not be fun. And timing the two to open at the same time is probably a work of magic, but
There's gonna be some overlap. It's
Gonna have to.
yeah.
Yeah, we also want to be cognizant of existing tenants, right? And we're not affecting parking to their spaces. We have heard that from a few business owners as well. So there are a lot of balancing pieces, but the goal is for both of the construction timelines to align. If not, then the parking lot timeline would exceed a little bit, but that the project would not be affected.
Nothing would make any of us happier than to see a bunch of construction equipment up there working on a daily basis.
Councilman Richards and I both have hammers and screw guns. ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I got 2 extra batteries, whatever.
Yeah.
We're ready to go.
I have everything that you need as well. Let's go.
Jackie, do you wanna?
I will not.
The wise
She'll
one.
cheer us on.
I will cheer you on and supervise.
Yeah, cheerleading service needed. Yeah.
Smart one.
All right, so that sums up our South Mall redesign. An additional key catalyst project that was outlined in the DRP and is also well underway is the 6th Street beautification efforts. We now have a 2-part scope to this effort. So on screen, you can see the red line is kind of the extent of the 6th Street beautification and where we're planning to study. So currently, we did kick off a traffic feasibility study. This portion of the study will tell us what could be done along 6th Street. So whether it's traffic calming measures, a roundabout, we want them to analyze the current uses, the current impact on traffic, as well as looking at future uses and considering those so that we can consider angle parking, wider sidewalks, create a pedestrian-friendly environment, landscaped medians, the entire wish list, if you will, so that we can fully understand what could be done via a traffic feasibility study. The next part of the scope to this effort would be to release an RFP for the actual design of construction and engineering of those improvements. So this considers, some urban design, engineering design services, landscape architecture, all the things alike to put a complete streets outlook into the scope. So with that being said, we have a next slide, please. The images on screen are from our adopted DRP and from last fall, which tried to address that angled parking, what pedestrian and vehicular access look alike. So the consultant will address the complete street outlook, and this will work to incorporate traffic calming measures, like I mentioned, angled parking wherever possible, wider sidewalks, and again, landscaped medians, so that we could create the vision for 6th Street and really kick off the vision for the downtown via this project. So the idea here is to create a sense of place for the downtown, and then we strive to deliver that vision to create a cohesive downtown. So the next screen here is our timeline for 6th Street beautification efforts. Like I mentioned, we have in partnership with planning, public works, CIP, traffic, all the groups alike. Big kudos to them as we've all collaboratively kicked off the traffic feasibility study scope, so that again will We can come back in August and present some options at study session on the outline of 6th Street and what that could look like. Give us some time to go back and forth based on direction, and then release that RFP for design in October with award of that contract in December. All of 2024 will be the design of the construction, and then with construction to commence and complete in 2025.
Can you
And-
remind me if the funds for this are, like, they are already secured and like
Yeah.
put aside, right?
Most of it. We're probably gonna need to put a little bit more money into it, but the bulk of the funds are set aside already through ARPA and a few other things.
Okay,
Mm.
perfect.
Right.
ARPA.
And
Yeah,
it's
and
okay
with
to-
that,
and it's okay to spend them all the way into 25?
December 25, I think, is the 5 or 6?
26.
6.
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
2026, you said is the deadline? Why don't we just keep it 2025?
Yeah.
Sharing that notion. We'll
Yeah.
go over it.
Just continue to say 2025.
Yes, that's the goal. So with that concludes my updates for you all today, and please let us know if you have any additional questions on the projects we talked about.
So that is a brief summary of some of the economic development initiatives that we're working on. I wanted you to hear directly from the administrators because they are day in and day out putting in their enthusiasm and hard work, and I think it shows that they're really committed to the projects that we're working on. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Will you be able to come back to us now that you have some of that data that you're sharing with our different shopping centers, and kind of give us like updates? Like, I think what would be really interesting to know is once you share that top 30, how are we ticking off of that list? Like, you know, top 30 was what we have determined is going to work well in the city of Corona. And we've shared that information with the shopping centers, and so far we've got
And those 30.
12. Yeah, obviously 12 of the top 30 have signed, you know, leases or will be coming. Or I guess one of the things I think would be disheartening to everybody is for us to share all this data, and then none of the top 30 come.
Jessica, what I'm hearing is they want you guys back again.
Absolutely, would love to come back and give you an update.
Yes,
Yeah.
they will.
Excellent.
I just want to say, you all have been really busy and it shows.
Yeah.
But what shows really with this presentation and what we're seeing actually in the community and what we're seeing with our partners is this kind of just this elevation of the way we're approaching economic development. And I'm just really grateful for that. So thank you for your good work.
I mean, it's interesting to see how the work that you guys have all done the last couple of years, and then having an owner that actually wants to implement these things, and seeing how fast Dos Lagos went from being, 40% occupancy or 50% occupancy to 100% in literally a year. So having, both sides that we're willing to support, and we're pushing that information forward with a developer that wants to succeed, that there's definitely a recipe for it.
And they're bringing in things that people want, right? All of the things that they've announced are super cool.
Yeah.
Playground.
They've done a great job.
Yeah.
Great work.
No reason anybody can't do the rest.
Miss Edwards, do we have any speaker cards from the public?
No, I do not.
Thank you. All right, ladies, great work. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the follow-up data.
Especially with creepy
None of that sounds right, but
Yeah.
Didn't hear anything
She said it,
about
not
this
us.
here.
Okay, next up, Senate Bill 1439. Miss Edwards will present this item.
oh boy.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I will be presenting item Senate Bill 1439. This item was requested by Councilmember West Speak. And the ask is that the council provide direction on the preferred method to track council member conflict of interest in accordance with SB 1439. SB 1439 was passed in 2022 and by the legislature, and it went into effect January 1st, 2023, but it does not apply to contributions received in 2022. SB 1439 prohibits accepting, soliciting, or directing a campaign contribution over $250 if the donor is involved in a proceeding involving a license, permit, other entitlements for use, including contract of award that is pending before the agency. SB 1439 also requires that the city council members recuse themselves from such proceedings if the member has received contributions within the previous 12 months. I did reach out to a good friend of mine at RCTC, their clerk of the board, to go over their process. The potential conflict of interest memo that they prepare for their board members is solely based on the contribution forms that are received by their purchasing department and their board members. They don't track any of the 460s because those aren't filed with them, so it's just based on what she receives from the board members and the purchasing department. How this would change the process for us would be different because we would have to work with our purchasing department as well as planning and development. So we would have to provide the form as part of our bid packet, as well as anybody that comes in to submit an application that would be coming forth to the council for approval. So the options would be, option 1 would be for elected officials to track their conflict of interest and recuse themselves when needed. Option 2 would be for city staff to track council members' conflict of interest and prepare the potential conflict of interest memo prior to each meeting. We did a survey, a listserv survey to the city clerks in California and also to the city clerks in Riverside County, and the question that we asked them was, does your city clerk's office compile a list, or do the elected officials provide you their conflicts and recuse themselves? And the results that we received from all agencies was that their council members track their conflicts, and they inform the clerks when they have to recuse themselves. So the pros and cons. The pros and cons for option 1, the pro would be that elected officials are most knowledgeable of their contributions that they've received because the contributions are tracked in their 460s. The 460s are submitted to the clerk's office semi-annually, so we wouldn't have current 460s. So if between the filing period a contribution was received, we wouldn't have that. And also it's consistent with other cities' approach, and there would be no blaming of staff if an oversight occurs, and there would be no cost to taxpayers. The cons for option 1 would be possible oversight by elected officials. For option 2, the pros would be that it reduces the burden on elected officials to track who has contributed to their campaigns. And then the cons for option 2 would be that the staff would be responsible for notifying the elected officials. It would require a full-time employee to work with the various departments to gather the campaign contribution forms. And then a possibility for staff oversight and blame. The cost for the full-time employee would be approximately $98,000 annually. And then the last con for option 2 would be that this is not the norm of how other cities track their conflict of interest. So then we just have the ask here again that the council provide direction on their preferred method. And I'm available for questions.
Wes, this was your request, so do
Yes.
you want to give us some background as to
Yeah, absolutely.
why?
So I saw this, since RCTC has to already do this already. They already have a method in place. And so when I thought this came out, what RCTC does, and I think I asked you to
You have the broadcast.
yeah, so I wanted to utilize the same form that RCTC does. Not that I didn't want staff to go and determine what all of our, people that donated to our campaign, who that was, but just to give us a list of people that were going to be, that we were going to be executing a contract with, or that was a party. And so we get this form, and there's another one I sent you to? One more. So that's a form, the first one you get is this one. And this tells you everybody that has a business before the board that day. And you look through, the elected official looks through and says, yep, ICF Jones and Stokes, they gave me $250. I will not be, and then you fill out the elected official fills out the second form. All I'm asking for is that we get provided this list, just like RCTC does to us, just like RCA does to you, that we determine whether or not we have a conflict, but this also goes through and makes sure that we know who the people are, or who the folks are that we're voting on that day.
Do you get this with your agenda packet? We don't get it at RCA. I've never seen something like this at RCA. But
Yeah.
You get that with your agenda packet?
Yeah, it comes when you get the notification that the agenda came out. You get this form that says the contracts are entering into, and a second form if you have a conflict, and you fill it out and you send it in, and then when the thing comes, you So that's, this way, the clerk has the information to put into the record, saying why you recuse, because there may be more than one. And yeah, so it just makes it cleaner. So we're not having to look through and going, all right, is there, how many of these do we have and which ones are they? The staff already has this information already. We're not asking them to pull any, to do any sleuthing, just putting it on a single page so we don't miss it.
You know what, when this bill came through, I automatically thought about just how difficult and how unintentionally oversights happen. Like, I'm just thinking about the fact that, like, Form 700s, right? You have to disclose any
Yeah.
gift over $50. And $50 is a dinner, right? It can be a dinner.
Right.
And, like, you fill out the Form 700 once a year. And if you're not tracking it as an elected official, that you've been given, I don't know, a $50, something of $50 values or greater, then it's not intentional, but you don't disclose, and those things can add up. And the
Yeah,
bill's
penalty.
intention is to essentially just, again, return the people's business to the people's business without influence. And so I definitely don't want to burden staff. But as an elected, it's hard for me to keep track of things that happened a year prior. I have a running list, and my standard form of operation is I just pay my own way for
Right.
things, so then I just don't have to, keep track of it. But I do take donations for my campaign, right? Like, I can't pay for my campaign. So I can see myself unintentionally, just having difficulty with this bill if it's just me trying to sift through everything. So I know for myself, I would appreciate knowing, here's a list of what we're doing business with. And then, you all don't have to keep track of my contributions. I have those readily and available.
Just so kind of a 1A. I
Yeah.
mean, I was proposing kind of a 1A if because it's not every single thing that we do. It's only things that are, and there's.
That are on the agenda.
Well, it's not just on the agenda. There has to be, we're giving a permit, we're doing a land use decision,
Yeah.
or we're awarding a contract. So
Yeah.
it's not every single thing that we do. It's not
Yeah.
labor contracts, it's not all those things.
Yeah.
It's literally a very small sliver.
And it's only donations within the last 12 months.
Right.
And really, once we're in the seat, most electeds end up spending down their campaign funds, closing out their campaigns. So it's just, campaign contributions aren't happening every single day. It's usually just around election time that we've got to get, and 12
Not happening
months
for me,
after.
that's for sure.
So, what I'm saying is,
Haven't got a contribution.
but we don't want to, like, unintentionally end up on the other side of it,
Yeah.
right? Like, cast a vote and then find out later that we shouldn't have.
Well, and it screws up the person that is trying to get that wants the decision to be made. 'Cause
And they
I've
made
also-
a donation like 11 months ago to your campaign or something,
Yeah.
and it has nothing related. I don't want any unintended, misunderstood conflicts, and so I would appreciate what you get at RCTC.
That was,
Well, I just want to make sure that this is not so much about the presentation, but about the law. It's not only looking back, but looking forward, because once you make a decision, you also can't accept a contribution from that person for 12 months.
Oh, I didn't know
Right.
that either.
Yeah.
It's worse.
So,
3 months.
so once you make a decision, it's 12 months forward or
Yeah,
3
yeah.
months forward? Oh.
12 months.
I thought it said 12 months, or 3 months.
No, it's 12 months forward, 12 months back. You're looking back on what you did, and then going forward, you can't accept it. And then the other little nuance, and again, this is not to say
Yeah.
one way or another whether you have the clerk provide this information, but just for your information,
Yeah.
a participant is also. So you could be in the middle of a hearing, and a neighbor, comes up to oppose a land use decision. If that person has given you $250, you all of a sudden, like, the FPPC, I think, is gonna try to come out with regulations, because I think they see there's some
Yeah.
issues with this, and like,
Yeah.
what is, now you've participated halfway through the hearing, okay, now you recuse yourself, like, so there's some issues with that, but just so you understand, not to get too complacent, even if you have this information
I
given
mean,
to you,
people,
that it's a much bigger issue for you.
then you just have to
Wow.
give the money back. So if some person
That-
said, well, I don't want any of you to describe, so I'm gonna give all of you $251 a year before this land use decision, none of you could vote. So then you decide which one of the three gives money back, or two votes on the thing. It's very
Take
complicated.
turns,
It's gonna be
can see
mean, it's
it
gonna be
being used.
litigated, there's
Yeah.
definitely some other stuff, but what I wanted to do, at least to give us a little bit of a leg up, and not putting, I didn't wanna put it all on staff. RCTC does this now, and it seemed to have worked pretty well, and I've caught myself a couple times where I didn't know, it's like, well, I missed that one of the sub-owners on some parcel was somebody that I had done work with, and even though it technically wouldn't have been a conflict, at least I knew about it, and I still recuse myself.
Jamie, just for clarification, it says here, preceding 12 months and for 3 months following the conclusion of the proceeding to any elected official. So you're saying it's 12 and 12?
I'm looking at.
It's 12 and 12, so that was a snippet from RCTC's document, so that might be before SB 1439.
That probably was, so.
That's the other
Oh.
old
This
form.
is not a new statute, it has always applied to
Okay.
appointed officers. They made other changes, in fact, I think they did change it from 3 to 12, so.
Which is funny, because if you were a planning commissioner,
Mhm.
or you were on any one of these regional boards, you had to do that.
Is that right?
But,
Yeah.
but a council and it didn't have to. So now it's making it
So,
even. I don't have an issue with it. I think it's a good thing to disclose this stuff. But at least, I think this is a way to kind of bridge the gap, so it's not all on staff.
Would a 1A be a huge lift, seeing, I mean, you're already like writing the agenda and kind of seeing who are the parties involved in the agenda. Would it,
I would still need another staff member, just because sometimes some of the items going to the agenda is a non-competitive bid, and that doesn't apply to SB 1439. So I would need to have somebody to go through the agenda, figure out what wasn't competitive bidding, what was, making sure that we received the forms from elected officials, also from purchasing. So we would need,
Well, you wouldn't need to
It's the
rely on,
opposite,
I mean,
though.
you
It's
wouldn't need it
competitive
from us.
bids
It's on, it's
Instead of
up
the
us. You wouldn't need to police us. It's, if we're stupid enough not to fill out the disclosure form, that's on us and that's not our fault. I was thinking if when it gets submitted, if they were given whoever the group was, say purchasing, or if it was planning or whatever, they fill out and saying, hey, this meets the requirement. Here's a list of whatever that we're submitting to you. So it's not you guys doing it. It's just another small form saying, hey, this does apply or it doesn't apply.
what would they even have to disclose other than like their name and
That's it.
who they gave to.
and we already get that through their competitive bid application, so it's just a matter.
Competitive bidding is not subject to
Sorry.
this.
So
Again, the
I'm-
idea being, if it's a competitive bid, right, they can't buy their way in.
Yes.
So it's the RFP,
Land use decision.
or just going out to give a contract or a land use decision, that's where this will
So there
apply.
are like 3 or 4 criteria, 3 or 4 items that can end up on is there a way to flag when those go through the agenda? Like, this is one of those 3 or 4 items. What's the name of the thing in, like,
I
does
almost
that
think it should
require a
happen.
form?
You guys shouldn't be doing it. It should be at the department level when
Does
it
that
comes.
even
We might need to, I think we might have to get more, like, I think a lot of times we get the name of the corporation. But if you're wanting, I think like RCTC has some of the CEO or, maybe some of the
No, they
named people.
no, they
I'm not
they
sure
put-
that's necessarily
No,
required
no,
by
they,
this,
they
but.
put that on. They put that on you. They don't put all the individual names.
Okay, I thought
say-
they had,
No,
so,
they say they'll give you the name of the name of the company and they'll give you the name of their rep. It's up to you. You have to figure out whether or
Did
not.
my donation come?
Yeah,
from
I
the
got a
association?
donation. Like
Which I'm
I got
okay
a
doing
donation
that
from
work.
somebody that was entering into, that was bidding on a parcel at RCTC, and they had given me money, but it wasn't the corporation. It was one of their people that work for them, and I had to write it down. But that's on me, not on you guys.
I've kind of lost track of what the ask is because I think we veered from option 1 and
No,
option
the option 1A is to do what RCTC does, to provide a short list of the, provide a list to
people on the
us
agenda.
of contracts or agreements that would meet the requirement under SB.
The 3 or 4 categories that Jamie listed that meet the requirements. So anyone, this is the list of, on this agenda, here's a list of the people or the organizations that meet that if you received money from them, you need to tell us.
Yeah, okay, so, but it's not option 1.
No.
No,
You guys are asking for a hybrid of option 1.
right,
That would be helpful.
which would be the
Is there a way, Jacob, that you could come back with option 1A articulated pretty clear? That doesn't involve adding extra burden to the staff? That way we could look at it?
I can do the first part, not the second part.
Yeah,
I
but
can't tell you that it won't create extra burden, but I can certainly bring it back and tell you what that looks like with a little more clarity.
yeah.
Hey Sylvia, what do you think
We'll
about?
just bring it back next available opportunity to do that. Sure.
I mean, we have time right now because none of the, we literally bought time between now, the time I asked for this, and today. The FPCC said nothing from 2022 is being considered. So I think we have some
We're
time.
good for a little bit.
Yeah, we have a year.
Yeah.
really, or until these guys start taking money.
Ms. Edwards, is there any speaker cards from the
I
public?
do not have any speaker cards.
Okay, great job, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, moving on to the Heritage Room. Does anybody care about the Heritage Room?
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah. The lending, the
No, you
lending,
cannot. I'm gonna go lock the door right now because we haven't even met yet.
yeah. It's a receiving file, thank
Come in
you.
and talk to you.
Uh,
Introduce myself.
The Heritage Room lending policy to city buildings. Danielle Whittington, the library manager, also known House of Gryffindor, will present the item.
It's gotta be a story.
Actually Ravenclaw, but thank you.
Yes.
Awkward moment.
Hey, my shirt. I found out.
She was not happy that my son is House of Slytherin.
I wouldn't say I was
Put words in her mouth.
I was shocked. I was shocked.
I am not shocked.
Quick, Danielle, jump in before we.
I'm so sorry. Well, thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name is Danielle Whittington, and I'm here to present on the Heritage Room lending items policy. My ask is for the City Council to review the proposed lending policy and to provide some feedback. So, why a lending policy? So currently there isn't an existing policy for items to be loaned out of the Heritage Room. And we were asked by Councilman Speak to create a document that states a course of action on how to borrow items from the Heritage Room.
Job, Wes.
The document's goal, first and foremost, is to not be restrictive, but it's to expand the possibilities of displaying items while also protecting them. It also outlines the borrowing procedures and necessary steps to display items within city buildings during the renovation of the Heritage Room. This is the bulk of my presentation right here. So it's the application and loan process. Well, at least it has an ending, so that's okay, right? Right. So within the document, there are detailed steps of the application and loan process. So first, a formal written request must be submitted to the library manager. That includes the following: brief description of the purpose of the loan, dates requested, borrower status, contact information of the borrower and person in charge of security, list of items requested, plans on displaying items, meaning display cases, frames, etc. The library manager will review the request and consult with staff. If the loan is reasonable and meets general curatorial and conservational guidelines, the borrowers will receive a letter of approval. And if additional accommodations are required, the library manager will inform the applicant in writing. If the borrower approves, they will sign the loan agreement. Library staff will work with the applicant to ensure that the items are displayed appropriately and in the location defined by the loan agreement. And the library staff also reserves the right to periodically evaluate and review the items at the locations to make sure that they are protected. And lastly, the library manager and borrower will coordinate a return of the item at the end of the loan period. Once the item is returned to the Heritage Room, the library staff will inform in writing that the library is in possession of the item and the borrower is released from their responsibility. So some considerations when evaluating a request are making sure the item or items can make the transportation to and from the Heritage Room and also will last throughout the display time. So items that are less than 6 feet long, larger than 1 inch, in good condition, and even better if we have duplicates of the item, make the lending process much easier. Textiles that don't show signs of wear are also a good item to consider. And so the items that are pictured here are inside our lovely Heritage Room, and these are really good examples of lending.
Are those real diamonds?
If they are, they shouldn't be in the heritage room.
You think they are?
It sparkles, that's all that matters. So the, sorry. Ideal environment conditions, this is a brief overview of the ideal environment conditions for particular items. A more detailed chart is located on pages 3 and 4 of the document. But while this is ideal, staff are willing to work with the borrowers to make sure that we create the perfect environment for their desired items. So these guidelines were researched from the Smithsonian, the Met, the Northeast Document Conservation Center, the National Archives and Records Administration, and the International Council on Archives.
I guess those places are okay.
They're okay.
They know what they're doing, I guess.
Sometimes, yeah. But also not included on this particular slide, but it is in the document. There are maximum display times for various items. Some that are very light sensitive, like textiles or photographs, may only have a 3-month maximum display, and then they need to go in dark storage for a period of time. And then my ask is for the City Council to review the proposed lending policy and to provide feedback.
Danielle, do we currently check out items? Does the Louvre lend out the Mona Lisa to people?
What's a specific answer?
I'm sure that
say no. That's the answer. All right.
No.
Hey, the Blue Boys on tour right now. That I know.
Wes, why do you want to loan items from the Heritage?
It's not to loan them out to like the general public. It's basically, you know, one of the questions came is if we wanted to bring an item from the Heritage Room to City Hall to display it, there's no policy for it. It'd be subject to the whim of whoever was, you know, either here or, you know, in the building to request those things, and it would be up to the person at the library or the Heritage Room to decide if that was okay. And what I wanted to do was, I didn't have any specific thing in mind. I just wanted to have a policy that would lay a process down if someone wanted to bring something that they were able to do so, and have the way that you weigh in, everybody would weigh in on.
And just to clarify, I think it is open to anybody. I don't think we're restricting this to any particular group that could, if an organization in the community wanted to loan out an item to be able to display for something, I think it would include anyone that wants to release it. Is that
This
correct?
particular policy deals within city buildings.
In city buildings.
Within city
Okay.
buildings. But this is a really great this is a great jumping off point to, if we did want to expand that, if that is something that the council would like us to do, we can certainly have that in the works.
Whatever you like.
Or not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like this because there just isn't, I mean, it's nothing that says you can't, but it's also, it puts some definite guidelines to preserve, because the item is really the most important thing. So I wanted to just, like I said, I didn't have anything particular in mind or anything. I just knew that we didn't have one and wanted to highlight it.
So this lending policy is only for intercity, right? So a resident couldn't call up and then say, I want to borrow something from the library. This is only if the city clerk's office really wants an antique coffee grinder displayed in their office.
Or if they wanted to display the very first ordinance that was written, that now it's currently sitting in a room at the archives and no one gets to see it, but if they wanted to display it, so when people came in, that'd be great.
Or even if a council member had some items that they wanted to see displayed in City Hall because they are of some significance,
Yeah.
they can make the request, the item could be
So it's not-
displayed.
Not the Louvre and
I
the
don't know
Mona
anybody.
Lisa.
Somebody
right?
could.
I just wanted to make sure.
Well, I can,
And museums often lend to other museums.
Yeah.
So,
I can tell you when I went to go to the Auburn Court Duesenberg Museum to visit the Flagler Trophy
Holy
that's
Grail.
being displayed there, that took me 3 years to find. Sitting right next to it was a car that actually raced in the 1914 race. It was on loan from the Indianapolis 500 museum. So they're loaning a whole car.
If the Louvre calls, we would consider
Yeah.
an item to them.
And I don't want the Mona Lisa.
I don't even want to know what the insurance would be.
Yeah.
on the Louvre. I can't
Okay.
afford
There you
it.
go.
Numbers that are above my pay grade, so, yeah.
Miss Edwards, are there any speaker cards?
Can I
Here, we
make-
actually
can I
have
make some
somebody on
comments?
Zoom that wants to speak.
Oh, then please. Hey, Joe? Can you hear us, Joe?
I'm working on it. This is we're trying to breach a new technology barrier.
There you go.
Hit it.
There we go. So, how you doing? So got home late from work, so I couldn't make it down to the afternoon meeting. I think that for all too long, the Heritage Room has been sort of acting like a private little club for those in the know, and it should be more widely appreciated and used. And I'm sure it probably will be more in the future with the improvements that are slated. But if this policy can bring the items that are in the Heritage Room to a broader audience and help people see what's in there and why they should appreciate it, then we should, by all means, we should do this. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Richens.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Sorry.
Come
Vice
on.
Mayor. Good Lord.
Mr.
No
Richards
respect.
is good. Danielle, Cynthia, thank you for the most excellent report. And Wes, I'm so glad you brought this forward.
This surprised all of us.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
Sometimes.
There's a Corona Heritage Museum up off of Foothill, and is it still a system in place for the Heritage Room to trade or loan out to the museum?
I'm not 100% sure on that status,
It
but
sounds like it's not formalized if that is happening, so.
Can we work on that, because they have a curator up there named Noella, and she's
Very good.
yeah, I just went up there last week and they redid their displays. They're now changing them out every quarter. So if we could get an agreement for,
So it's a proposal for adding the Corona Heritage
Park.
Park as one of the locations that could have items like
yeah,
ours.
along with city buildings.
I will second
Yes.
And if you guys haven't been up there recently, I strongly recommend it. They are going above and beyond, and they have a ton of history that they're trying to get out too. And then for the very light sensitive,
Mhm.
I guess the color photographs, can we put like a budget for framing and duplicating? So like, because I don't think it's like, here's the
Scan
thing.
a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff scanned.
We have a lot of stuff scanned.
Yeah, and here's the thing with photographs, like you go out in the hallway over there, you really don't need to see the original. You just don't. And you would rather the original, and the digital technology to duplicate so easy and so fast. Can we just put a budget together or a small budget together where if a photograph is asked for, it can be framed and then brought over? Is that fair?
Can the borrower do that?
Yeah, how about we just provide the scan of it, not the original? I wouldn't wanna
Would the borrower
give a
then just
color,
pay for the
a
print
photograph. That seems like it's very light sensitive.
or for the print, whatever?
I'm down with that.
Why do we need to give it to them framed? If it's a copy?
They pay for the copy.
They
We have
pay
that
for
system
it,
now.
I'm just saying, like, if someone brought a painting over, right, you don't wanna just staple it to the wall. Like, it's gotta be preserved and taken care of, right, so.
I think that's discussed in there though, about how they have to come up with a plan.
You have to show how they're gonna display it. We're gonna.
the cost.
The roommate agreement.
Right, yeah, I don't want us, if they wanna borrow something, just like if, you know, we wanna go borrow something, you have to pay, you gotta pay all the costs to move it.
You wanna use my car, you pay for gas.
Yeah, no one rides for free. Alright, well then, it's perfect. Right, and again, Les, thank you.
So I guess the ask has been amended to include the Heritage Park?
An approved facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Upon you saying it's okay, of course, just adding them in as
Same
an option.
process.
I want these items to be viewed, so let's do this.
Wes,
I knew I liked you already.
do you agree with this? We're
Yes.
providing direction, Jackie?
Yes.
Tom?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Jim was very hot on this. He was very sorry that he missed it, but I'm sure he would be.
You tried to call in.
I'm sure he would be supportive as well,
Yeah.
and I am as well. This is great.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
So, meeting adjourned. The next meeting will be the city council at 6:30 downstairs. Thank you so much.